Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, February 11th, 2026 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, recording today from Jacksonville, Florida. And this episode is brought to you by the SANS.edu Graduate Certificate Program in Cybersecurity Engineering. Well, of course, top of the news today, Microsoft's Patch Tuesday, and the number of patches was actually not that bad. We got patches for 59 different Microsoft vulnerabilities. There were patches released earlier this month for Microsoft Edge. Those are the Chromium browser vulnerabilities that were sort of ported over to Microsoft Edge. But the big story is really that we have 6 vulnerabilities that are being addressed that were already exploited before today. And 3 of these vulnerabilities have been somewhat publicly known already. So those 3 are the ones that you need to pay most attention to. And a little bit lucky, I guess, these are actually 3 similar and related vulnerabilities. You may be familiar in Windows with technologies like Smart Screen and such, where if you're downloading some binary or some script and then you double click it, well, you'll get a warning that you're about to execute code that you downloaded from the internet. And these vulnerabilities allow to bypass exactly sort of these type of warnings. Now, it affects 3 different subsystems here, which is why we have 3 different vulnerabilities. One is Windows Shell, one is Microsoft Word, and then we also have a patch for MS-HTML. That's the good old Internet Explorer HTML rendering engine. Of course, has long been replaced with Microsoft Edge, which has its own rendering engine, but a lot of sort of other software still uses MS-HTML, and that's why we need this patch. In addition, we got 3 more vulnerabilities that were already exploited. 2 of them are privilege escalation vulnerabilities, one in remote desktop, and then we also do have a type confusion vulnerability in Windows Manager that also then results in privilege escalation. Now, the 6th vulnerability here is a denial of service vulnerability in the remote access connection manager. Yeah, so this is really sort of the big thing here. We also have critical vulnerabilities in Microsoft Azure. I already mentioned them actually because they were patched in Azure directly. So I think last week I may have mentioned those vulnerabilities. And another sort of interesting critical vulnerability that affects Microsoft Windows Defender, but only on Linux. So not on Windows. And it can lead to a remote code execution. We often have this in security software like this, that unpackers, decompression often leads to bad memory allocations and such. So that's probably what's going on here. So if you're running Windows Defender on Linux, well, definitely make sure you update that and patch that. That's certainly something that you have to pay attention to because, well, it's supposed to protect you and it's supposed to deal with sort of unfiltered input that it's inspecting, and that's sort of why this is important. But other than that, well, I wouldn't say there's sort of anything super critical here. Like all these vulnerabilities I mentioned earlier, they still require that the user downloads and then launches essentially a script. So it really just makes these type of exploits, which are of course still very common, easier if an attacker takes advantage of these sort of security feature bypass vulnerabilities. And a little side note to the Microsoft Patch Tuesday, there is also, actually has already started an effort underway by Microsoft to update certificates being used for Secure Boot. I think I mentioned that before, but Secure Boot was originally introduced in 2011. The CAs, the certificate authorities being used for it, they had a lifetime of 15 years, and 2011 plus 15 gets you to 2026. So later this year, these root certificate authorities are going to expire. Over the last couple of years already, many new PCs that you may have purchased did come with these updated certificate authority certificates. So they should be all set. But as part of these sort of monthly updates, Microsoft is now pushing out these certificates to any older PCs that don't have yet current certificates. If you miss these updates, well, your PC will continue to function. The problem is that any updates to the boot system will require current working certificates. And so you'll basically be stuck with sort of whatever boot system you have. And, if there are vulnerabilities that pop up, which has happened in the past, you won't be able to apply any patches to it. So definitely make sure this happens. But if you are reasonably current on your Windows patches, this should automatically be taken care of. Yeah, and there was actually sort of a little bit of similar thing happening with Apple last week, couple of weeks ago, where they pushed updates to some of their older operating systems. Now, this wasn't anything about secure boot, but a couple set of authorities that Apple uses for things like iMessage and such. They're about to expire, so these certificates basically kept that working. And same thing there. If you don't update those certificates, then even future updates that may be released may not work or cannot be applied because, well, they wouldn't be properly signed for these old operating systems. Well, and if you downloaded 7-zip lately, double check that you got it from the right website. Apparently, there are some YouTube tutorials around that are redirecting users to a website that's very plausible, but is delivering a trojanized copy of the software. The malicious website here is 7zip.com, a very logical choice actually for someone to download the software from there, but the actual website is 7-zip.org. So not .com, it's .org, and there's also a dash between 7 and zip. Yep, definitely make sure that you download your software from the correct source. And these things, of course, particular with the similarity here of the website, you would almost think that the fake website actually has kind of a better, more plausible domain name than the actual website. Well, that's it for today. We also had, of course, two FortiNet vulnerabilities, one in the sandbox and an authentication bypass in LDAP, but, well, too many of them, so I'll just add the links to the show notes. And thanks for liking, subscribing, and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.